via the Fire Services YouTube page. Due to government guidance on social distancing, this meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the provisions set out in the local authorities and police and crime panels, flexibility of local authority and police crime panels meeting regulations 2020. Minutes of the meeting will be produced in the usual way, and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on the Fire Services YouTube page. To enable the meeting to run in an order manner, I'll ask members to observe the use of protocols by keeping the video camera switched on for the duration of the meeting and your mute button off. When I invite you to speak, please unmute your microphone, ask your question, then mute it again to allow the officer to respond. If we run into any technical problems, I'll ask for your patience while we try to resolve it. If not, I may have to declare an adjournment. We'll make a start by calling the names of all members to establish your presence. Dawn, can you continue, please?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Barbara Ashwood, we've got apologies from. So Councillor Mohammed Jamil.
Present.
Councillor David Over.
Present.
Councillor Simon Bywater.
Present.
Councillor Derek Giles.
Finally, yeah.
Councillor Bill Hunt. Councillor Bill Hunt's there. I think he's muted at the moment. Councillor Kevin Reynolds.
Present.
I am here. Sorry, it's Bill here. I was being asleep. I'm here.
Councillor Mike Shellens.
Here.
And Councillor Mandy Smith.
Present.
Well, thank you for that. So the only apologies we've got is Councillor Barbara Ashwood.
Yes, that's correct.
At this stage, does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? No, can't so. Move on to the next item. We're being asked to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of July 2020 as a correct record. You can ask any member who does not agree with the proposal to click the raised hand function on the right of the screen now. I can see no objection to the proposal to approve the minutes as a correct record, so we'll take that as carried and move on. Move on to item 4. Policies and Resources Committee action. Do any of the officers present have any updates or comments to make? No. Any members present wish to ask any questions? No, thank you very much. Therefore, the action log is noted. Item 5, minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting held on the 16th of July and the 1st of October. These minutes are only for noting, but obviously, if any questions you've got to ask, we can deal with it. No.
Yes.
Oh, carry on. Sorry, I didn't see you.
People often try not to see me. 884, there are 3 bullets, and it was the third one says clarified that following the meeting reports would be circulated that would provide details of the fleet management policies and procedure audit. Have they been sent?
I'll try and get you a response on that. Hang on a sec. So you don't know the answer to that, do you, Dawn?
No, I don't. I'm not sure whether Deb might know, or we'll get a response to you after the meeting.
Right, I've got the same sort of question on 85, the second bullet. Expressed concern regarding the report presented to committee and sought assurance the committee was operating as it should. Officers confirmed this was the case and the two reports discussed by RSM would be circulated. Same question.
They were definitely circulated, those two reports.
Thank you.
The
I
first
was
one with
obviously
regard,
asleep.
yeah, with regard to fleet, I'll follow that up because I'm not aware that has been circulated. So I think between myself and John, we'll make sure that's followed up.
And then 86, the second and third bullets, exactly the same question. Have things been circulated that we're going to take, that we're down to be circulated?
Right, I think there's one that's definitely had, one that we're not sure about. If I can ask Deb and Dawn between them to go through that document and where it's said reports will be circulated, just to double check. And if for any reason any of the reports haven't been sent, then circulate them to all members, please.
Thank you, Chairman.
Well, thank you for bringing it to our attention. Getting so much stuff coming through at the moment, it's easily to overlook. Right, if we can now move on, if there's nothing more on that item, to item 6, the comprehensive spending review and draft budget. Can I ask Matthew Warren to introduce this report? Matthew, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So, I mean, clearly there's been a lot of coverage in terms of the financial position that the country finds themselves within, and I would say that as an accountant, this has probably been one of the most interesting years on record. Not necessarily the most positive, but certainly one of the most interesting. But in terms of where we're at, what you have presented is a draft, the first draft budget for 2021-2022. Get my years right. Clearly, there's a lot of ongoing uncertainty at the moment, and that's what this budget hopefully looks to hopefully bridge, certainly in the short term. So, members will be aware that the comprehensive spending review has been scheduled now for some significant time. We were hoping to have one last year, that was put back. We were hoping to have one this year, and clearly that's been put back again because of the pandemic, or the ongoing pandemic. The uncertainty, obviously, on public finances means that we are not absolutely sure in terms of what our funding position will look like, although we are being told that we are not going to receive any form of cut when it comes to our government grant. What we don't know at the moment, though, is collection rates and some of the impact that we're currently seeing in terms of in the current financial year on council tax collection is obviously negative, because people, for whatever reason, whether they've been furloughed or unfortunately lost their employment status, has meant that people just can't afford to pay council tax. So that's having an impact, and it varies depending on where you are, certainly within the county. So, but the full impact of that is unknown at the moment. So that's obviously a factor moving forward into the next financial year. On top of that, we have issues in terms of what we normally budget for is housing growth. We normally budget about 2% on housing growth on any one financial year. And that's a significant, it has a significant impact in terms of us as a service. We get about £200,000 alone just on housing growth a year. Now we're expecting next year that won't flow through, again because of the delays of getting new housing online with regard to COVID. So those elements obviously provide the basis for the uncertainty. Added to that, we've had additional costs pressures that are documented, and I've highlighted them predominantly in the appendix contained within the paper. So if you go to the appendix, I'll take you through that, and then I'll put some context around those. So we've got inflation in there of £156,000 at the moment. That inflation is on everything except pay. And we'll come on to pay in a moment, because obviously that was an announcement that came as part of the comprehensive spending review. So we've got inflationary pressures across the board in other areas, not hugely significant. You can see only 0.5%, but that 0.5% equates to £156,000 worth of an additional cost. In addition, Go on, sorry, Kevin.
I was going to say, Matthew, you're probably not aware, but you keep freezing, so we're not getting.
Oh dear.
We're getting some bits missed out of your sentence, which is no
Sorry.
fault of your own.
Mine
Sorry.
is continuous, Chairman.
I can hear you all right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
I think
Yeah.
it might be you, Kevin.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll carry on, but yeah, so one of us is having some technical glitches. I'll carry on, and then if members can ask some questions at the end, hopefully we can carry everything off. So we've got some additional pressures that have been created by COVID. One of those is our cleaning contract. So our cleaning contract was up for renewal anyway. So we were being told that obviously there would be an increase in pricing on that contract. What we decided to do was bring it back in-house. So we've actually employed our own cleaners again, which we've had some considerable challenges with our cleaning contract over a number of years. So we've taken that back in-house. That does create a pressure for us and a burden. But obviously with the importance of keeping all of our stations clean and if you like, COVID secure, then we felt that was an important thing to do. So we've done that, and we've also looking at a health and wellbeing advisor. So it's only that post is one post, but we're looking to bring if you like, a clinical expert in that can help us triage cases so we can get the best possible support to all of our people that need it as quickly as we can get it to them. So that's another additional burden. So that's within the £130,000 you see there within LG staff. There are some other bits. The other one around operational activity is worth highlighting. That's 99,000. So we have a rolling average for our on-call service. So the way we budget is for every 3 years, we have a rolling average in terms of the upkeep of that budget. And this year it shows that we're actually underfunding that by the tune of £99,000. Obviously, it's not wholly accurate because then it's based on historic data. So next year it may be that's overstated, but we just we always obviously try to be prudent in that sense. And then the other couple of things there, so we've got a variation with regard to what we called Health Shield. So we have, for the last couple of years, we've managed to fund our Health Shield program, which is effectively a quasi, I'll call it private medical cover, but it doesn't go quite as far as that. What it does do is gives us the opportunity to accelerate some of our operational officers. So if they have maybe some form of musculoskeletal problem, we can provide them with physiotherapy or some sort of early intervention to keep them at work, or it reduces the burden of sickness for them and the service. So it's proved really successful, but we do need to budget for that now, because whilst we've been able to get away with it over the last couple of years, you'll see in the paper, I think it's item 8, that actually we're now starting to become very stretched in terms of our budgets, for both certainly for this financial year, and it will only get worse for the future. So that's the context behind the increases. There have been some budget holder savings that counter those increases. You see £150,000 worth there. So that's where we go through with a fine-tooth comb every single year with our budget holders and effectively say to them, you need to justify your budget position. So there's numerous examples across the detail which members will get come January, in terms of where budget holders have saved. So an example of a saving at the moment is in there. There's on our printing contract, we've saved money because, well, one, people aren't printing, but two, we changed the contract some about a year ago. So that savings been offered back up. So there's numerous examples of that, but they tend to be smaller levels. So just putting that into context, what this budget is based upon is a 2% increase in council tax. And it really doesn't fund anything other than those items I've spoken about. What it also doesn't fund isn't any increase in pay award, which obviously from a government perspective, they're expecting a pay freeze in the public sector, with the exception of the NHS and the armed forces, I believe. So it's pretty much a standstill budget with the exceptions I've spoken about. Any questions from anybody, I'd be more than happy to take.
Thank you, Matthew. I think part of the problem there may have been that I'd unmuted my mic and it was interfering with yours. Seems to be okay now. So we've got 4 people. First of all, Mandy.
Thank you. Can I just ask Amy Jackson, what are you head of? Sorry, I don't know. That is a question.
Head of Finance and Property.
Right. Sorry, I probably should know, but I didn't.
It's okay.
Right. Basically, right. The 2%. I know there's never. Every time we go out for consultation, the members of the public are brilliant. Love the fire service. Never complain. Never even come. All the rest of it. But was it looked at if we sort of did lesser? I know that would have an impact somewhere, but if we did, we ever look at doing a lesser increase because people are struggling out there.
Yeah, I mean they are. I think they are. There is a lot, and I get that, Councillor Smith. I really do, and I think and this is part of the balance that we have to strike, isn't it? I mean, for a year we're talking £1.44, and I know in isolation that probably isn't a lot to many people, but it's when you start adding up the counties and the places and everybody else. So I do understand that. I think from my perspective though, it would be remiss of me if I didn't offer up the position that I think is going to safeguard the service, not necessarily just for next year. This is around making sure that our base is at a point where in future years, because I think to be honest, I think whilst I'm not sure we'll ever return to the austerity that we saw in 2010, I do believe there's still going to be some challenges for us as a service. So actually, if we don't take this opportunity now, we are going to have to make the only place we can go to make these sort of savings. And actually, if we went to zero as a percentage, you're talking £400,000 worth of savings. We're going to have to take out pretty damn quickly. And actually, the only place we really have is our people. So that's the rationale for me starting at this point in terms of saying, this is where I believe we need to go.
Yeah, I don't want an uproar. I'm not saying sort of.
No, I know you don't. I know you appreciate that.
Get rid of anybody. It's just basically it's members of the public. If they ask these questions, it's nice to have some sort of figure. Yeah. Well, look, we did look at, but you're happy with how things are. But if you start to cut it. So I just wanted to make sure that we'd looked into it or at least thought about it.
And I think it's probably just worth adding, and Chris may want to come in here. So what we are doing with all of our management team is early in the new year, we are starting to look at that for the future to say, okay, well, this is all very well and good. This maybe next financial year, but in the future, we might not be able to continue down this route. So how are we going to potentially restructure the service again if we need to? And we've been open with all of our people about that. Councillor Smith, we've told them all we're looking at it, but it's only around scenario planning at the moment. Hopefully, fingers crossed, everything will all return back to normal really, really quickly and the economy will pick up and all will be good. But we need to be preparing ourselves for that.
Thank you.
May I come in, Chair?
Oh, Chris, yeah.
Yes, mate, sorry. Just on that subject, I think Matthew's absolutely right. We're having conversations right now. And the conversations are along the line is if you look at the country's economy and look at the amount of money that's owed and the fact over austerity, we didn't actually reduce the structural deficit at all. It's actually increased significantly. And the fact that we've got Brexit and we've got an economic depression that's hit the country, we need to prepare ourselves for the potential impact on public sector. And so what we are doing as a service right now is we're looking for all the areas where we might be able to trim. The one thing I would say, though, we've got Her Majesty's Inspectorate report that outlines how we perform as a service. And obviously we are good across every area. So we're matching what we do to that report so that when we do come back with potential areas to reduce, we'll be able to align it back to the standard that's been set for fire and rescue services. The one thing I would say that the one step down from good requires improvement. And my concern, and I know Matthew and John share exactly the same concern, is we've taken the equivalent of £8 million from our budget since 2010, 2011. We would have a £38 million budget. It's now 30. We have slimmed down the organisation absolutely as far as we can, and we are currently living on a knife's edge. And I'll be honest with you, if we had to pay a pay rise next year, that would cause us problems because we would have to cut somewhere else. So I'm not saying it's a good thing that we don't, because our firefighters deserve a pay rise if possible, but we are very, very close to the edge as an organisation. So, my view would be very clear. I think the 2% isn't to stave off and lessen the impact of future cuts. It's to maintain what is a good service and ensure we can continue providing that service as we move forward.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Chris, for expanding on that. Mandy, are you happy with the response to your question?
Yes, thank you. I just had to ask, because when members of the public ask, I did have to have, it's just not.
Absolutely. And the additional information that Chris just gave us was very helpful.
It was. Thank you very much.
Derek, and followed by Jamil.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's regarding 5.2 about the impact of.
You've muted yourself.
How did I do that? I didn't even touch the keyboard. Just like that. Yeah, where was I? Yeah, regarding 5.2 and the impact on council tax collection, and fully appreciate the difficulty people are having. You mentioned about growth, potential growth, and I do wonder, especially in St Neots, where there's loads of houses now in Wintringham coming online, what is the position of houses coming online or properties coming online after April? Does the fire service then pick up the revenue from those new houses? Being the collection agency is in our case, HDC, what actually happens to that additional money that's generated after April?
Yep.
Matthew's nodding his head there like a dog in the back of a car.
Yeah, Councillor Giles, no, you're absolutely right. So what happened? So effectively, what we've done. So last year, this time last year, we prepared a budget and we said actually we expect council town bandy equivalent houses to increase by 1%. Over the course of the next year. Right where we are now is that we don't anticipate that 1% to come to fruition effectively. So there's going to be so basically we're resetting that base down. So it's a compounding effect. So where you'd expect to get 1% and then another 1% and then another 1%, we're effectively taking 1%, if you like, that growth for this year out. But it will come back eventually, and I think that's the point that you're making. When will it come online? And that's why we're making this the prudent as we are. I expect it will come online, but it's going to be a delayed coming online.
Yeah, I was being a little bit more specific than that. Say a house comes in online, say in May, this coming year,
that's
next year. Do we immediately benefit? Do we get that money straight away from that new property?
So the way it works is that each collecting authority will make an estimate for us now. So they'll say, we estimate that there will be 10 new houses come online in St Neots in May. So they'll give us that estimate and they'll say that's the basis number that we should be collecting from. It might vary slightly, but effectively yes. So if they're estimating it should come online, then we will get the benefit of it.
And if there's 20 houses come online?
If there's 20 houses, the collection fund next year will, at the end of the year, will say, actually, we're in surplus, fire and rescue service. What we told you should collect is 100,000. Actually, what we've managed to collect on your behalf, because they come online earlier, is 120,000. You've got another 100. You've got another £20,000.
Really, that's most interesting. I wonder whether that applies to town councils.
It should do. Should do.
I know it should do, but I wonder whether it does.
I'll leave that with you.
Thank you very, very much.
Okay.
Okay, Jamil, followed by Mike Showens.
Okay, Matthew, my question is about reserves. Now, how dangerously close are we before we have to dip into those? And what are we required to have in reserves? So, we can meet our commitments. And I'm thinking, I don't want to be in a situation where the government turn around and say, well, actually, you've got to go dip into your reserves before we give it. So Can you just sort of explain a bit around that for me, please?
So yeah, absolutely, Councillor Jamil. So where we're at with reserves at the moment is I would say we're in a really strong position, but a couple of key considerations. So and I'll bring so when I bring the actual budget paper back in January, you'll have all of this detail. But right where we are now, we've got a significant reserve for property redevelopment, and that was all around our new training centre in Huntingdon. Contracts are signed on that, so effectively that reserve is now completely committed, and I'll say it doesn't exist for all intents and purposes. In the paper later on, I also go on to explain that we're now starting to draw down significantly on what we call the operational reserve. So we have a reserve that we set aside so we can actually recruit firefighters ahead of known retirements to ensure that we maintained our crewing levels. We are significantly going to hit on that reserve this financial year. So I think we're overspent by best part of £300,000 on operational personnel this financial year. That reserve of 975,000 is going to be impacted upon significantly. So that leaves really the general reserve and the pensions reserve. The pensions reserve we keep because actually, and again you'll see a paper later on that I don't actually know what's happening with regard to pension liability, certainly for the future, and what impact that will have on our financial position. But we can touch on that when we get to the item later on in the agenda. So it leaves us with our general reserve. Our general reserve is about just short of £3 million at the moment. That is quite heavy, but we have committed, and again, it was part of the authority's financial strategy that we took through last year, that we will commit some of that reserve to finance capital expenditure in the short term, but it's only in the short term to bring it down to what I would call a more adequate level. So your opening point was, can government lay criticism at us? I would suggest that right now, with what we're doing and what we've done in terms of that planning, it will be very difficult for any government to come at us and say your reserves are too high, because they are committed. They're committed for legitimate reasons, and actually we're starting to show that we're drawing down on them. And when we get to this point next year, I would expect that we're going to be holding quite a limited number, but a much smaller number in terms of reserves.
Is there like a bottom line figure that we need to always have?
Yeah, I mean, realistic from a general reserve perspective. I mean, audit won't commit, external audit won't commit to that. But I mean, Chris will come in here as well in a minute, because there's always going to be a minimum level for whatever size service you are. We always carry some risk. So realistically, we're probably going to be looking at something that's approaching the 5% of our overall budget. So we're looking at £1.52 million. I would suggest that we don't want to be falling much below that in terms of general reserve.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
If it's okay, Chair, I'd just like to add in, and as Matt is outlining, we're doing something that we've not really done in the past, and that we're eating into our reserves. So our savings are diminishing. So once the new training centre and fire stations out the way, we are going to be, I think our reserves are going to be relatively low. My concern, I mean, take the point about £300,000 overspend this year to support our whole time system. The reason we're doing that is because we have a very lean system. And so, whereas before, when we had 14% extra staff on the system, we could allow our levels of crewing to drop significantly and then top it back up again, but not overspending the budget. But now, because we've got less staff, because of the reductions we made along the years, we can't really do that anymore. So we're having to recruit and over-establish in effect, so that we can maintain the crews on the pumps. My concern is, moving forwards, unless we can come up with some really innovative ways of working, that is going to be an ongoing pressure for us, and actually we won't be able to keep committing. So it puts pressure on the whole time system. So and it's back to the point around why we're looking to get the increase we are, because I think otherwise we are storing ourselves up some significant problems for down the line.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chris. difficult times are definitely ahead, particularly if we've got restrictions on our council tax base. We barely keep up with inflation. And I suspect this time next year, when we're looking at the finances and the training centre is complete, or at least the financial side is better known, we might see that our reserves might be worse off than we actually feared. But there's no provision for us to top them up. So, and the other thing, of course, members, is to be aware of, well, I know you are, but I'll mention it again, is every time we get inspected or looked at by an outside agency, levels of reserve are always looked at, and sometimes comments are made about the high level, even though it has been ring fenced for a training centre project. So it's a necessity, unfortunately, to run the reserves down in a sensible and prudent way. Mike, can I ask you now, and that's followed by David Over.
A number of points, Chairman. First of all, as regards housing numbers, 2 points. First of all, we had, in my parish, we had 5% increase this year, and I would expect that to continue. So, and part of the reason for it continuing is that the mortgage rate, the mortgage applications are at their highest ever level. So there is clearly a lot of movement in the housing market, and some of that will come through. I mean, clearly somebody moving from property A to property B makes negligible difference, but somebody moving from no house to a big house does make a difference. Secondly, just a question as to whether the fuel is the cheap fuel that we're experiencing now is already in the budget. Thirdly, with regard to pay, I heard Matthew say that there are no effects because there's no inflation because they're all frozen. But given that we've just taken the cleaning staff in, I wonder whether everybody is over the 24,500 limit, because I think that is the limit. And finally, I would have thought that whilst we are overstaffed at the moment, the current economic situation, which is fairly dire and looking as if it's going to get much worse, is going to make recruitment in hard to fill up areas much easier, I think, because people will have nowhere else to go. Thank you, Chairman.
So if I can come back in there, Chairman. So in terms of recruitment, I think I would agree with you, Councillor Shellens. One thing we've seen this year as well is a very, very low level of turnover of our staff, which we have had, you know, again, well, like many organisations, we have a throughput of staff. This year we haven't. So again, what and you'll see it in other organisations, they sometimes say, well, actually they'll under budget for employees because they know there's going to be some turnover of staff and they'll have gaps, whereas we haven't done that, and it's a good job we didn't, because we haven't had those gaps. So that's the first point. Second point, in terms of those that are earning under £24,000 or £24,500, yes, that has been taken account of, and I'm looking at Amy for her to give me a nod, because I know we had a conversation about it last week or the week before. So in terms of that minimum wage and making sure that those people are, or low earners are their salaries are inflated, that has been included, as has the fuel. And you're right, we are benefiting from low cost of fuel at the moment. And let's hopefully that will continue and there won't be a mass run on inflation, but I can't believe the demand is going to be there in the short term on our fuel. So Amy, is there anything you wanted to add? No.
Thank you.
Just to confirm then, Matthew, where it says that there's no pay inflation, there will be a little bit.
Well, I think where it's been built in is on the other line of LGE staff, because they're new staff. We built them in. I don't believe there's been anybody else affected, has there, Amy? So everybody else, even our trainee firefighters, earn more than that minimum wage, don't they?
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, before I take David's question, we've referred a couple of times to overstaffing, and that sounds a bit dramatic.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that is where we've got known vacancies coming along plan retirements, and we've planned for them in advance.
That's correct. So what we have is a number of, as you'll appreciate, Chairman, after so many years or of a certain age, particularly our operational staff have the ability to draw down on their pension, and we are planning on the basis that they will do that, and as such, to get ahead of the game and make sure that operationally they're ready to sit on a fire engine, and before those people leave, we are recruiting in advance.
Thank you. That's how I understood it.
That's correct.
David.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back a few minutes, we were talking about council tax for the fire service. I've been involved once with the police and secondly with the city council as a whole, where we've had standstill council tax demands. And in both cases, it took years for the organisations to make up for those standstill budgets. And I would be very reluctant not to increase our precept, because it could take us a considerable amount of time just to get back to the state of where we are now. So I just issue that with a little bit of experience in reduction in standstill of council tax.
Thank you, David. I think that's something that we all share. Any more questions? I cannot see any more questions on this particular one. So we're being asked to endorse the recommendations, which is the draft budget for 21-22, including the provisional precept attached in Appendix 1, and also to endorse the proposed draft 2% increase in council tax for consultation. Is everybody happy to go along with them recommendations? Yes, thank you for that. Right, I can't see anybody objecting, so those recommendations have been approved, and in doing so, I'll move on to the next item, which is item 7, property update. And can I ask both Maurice, who you know, and Amy, who I probably should have introduced at the beginning, in fairness, just because I knew her, I assumed everybody else did. Can I ask both of you to introduce this report? Thank you.
Chairman, just before we start, we'd like to show a video to members to start with, so they can put it into context when we go through the paper itself. There's a short video with some star performers on it, which basically demonstrates what we've been doing with our property capital program over the last few years, so you can really physically see the improvements that the money's made to the service. Are you happy for me to try and share my screen and show you it on YouTube? You're on mute, Chairman.
A great idea, as long as it is short.
It's a few minutes long, as I recall. It's not an hour. Right, here we go. Let's try.
I've not got no volume, Masha.
Matthew, are you in Citrix session?
I'm old enough to remember silent movies.
I was worried it was only me. Well done, Mike.
I'm afraid I do believe that requires that the laptop audio will be on rather than anything else, and then it will play the sound.
Right.
Sorry, I only picked up half of that. I came back in.
So I can see that you're wearing your headset. So in order for the video to play, I do believe that you need to disconnect that, and
Okay.
then you'll be able to play that.
Right, we'll have another go then. I'll disconnect my headset. We'll try that. And if you can give me a thumbs up either way, Kevin, and then we'll see how we go from there.
Right. Unfortunately, no sound again.
Okay. Okay, I think what we'll do then, I'll share it with you if you're happy. I'll share it with you all afterwards because clearly I took my headset out and for whatever reason it still wasn't sharing. So
okay, that's a shame because you had us all ready for it.
Matthew, sorry, can I just come in
Yeah.
and just check if are you in Citrix session?
No, I'm not into. I don't use Citrix for this.
Oh, okay. I was going to say it might just
Could
be your
try.
overall volume.
No, I've turned it all up as well, so I don't quite know what's why it wouldn't do that.
Right, if you can retrieve it before the end of the meeting, then we'll listen.
Okay.
If not, you'll have to circulate it. Yes, we do want to watch it. I'm sure
Yeah.
Morris has got plenty to tell us on that video. So we'll carry on best we can.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, Morris and Amy, try and work your way through it without the video.
Okay, so I'll make a start and cover some of the things that we covered in the video itself.
Okay.
So this is what we're proud to have achieved over the last 3 years, and what we've done more recently is we've blended what we've understood about our premises. We've had a company called Oakleaf who did an independent condition survey of all the fire stations, which has identified the property stuff that needs doing. And we're now linking that through to the IRMP, the master plan of how we deliver our operational service out there to the public. So from that and through the group that Matthew chairs, the Property and Asset Board, we come up with a list of refurbishments that we've done at stations, which we're very proud what we've achieved over the last. We've got a lot of stuff done, and that's been with the help of the procurement department and making sure that we get the right type of contractors that deliver the quality of refurbishment we're looking for. And we work with the stations as well. And the stuff that we've done is turning stations and some of them hadn't had any significant work done for the last 20 years. They've just been maintained, but in terms of if you walk in there, they don't look a lot or didn't look a lot different to what they did when they had bars and snooker tables, but now they do look different. And in terms of accommodating how people work now, provision of computers. There's also the health and safety stuff that's changed over the years where we store the fire kit, proper facilities to clean and maintain breathing apparatus sets, which hadn't been looked at again since we introduced the sets and since standards have improved. And also the facilities for showering, and disabled toilets. So all the stations we've been to have got this stuff within the existing capital budget. So there's no increased money, just making good use of the money that the members have allocated each year. So we've been able to do that. The other thing worth a mention as well is training. I think it's something that's probably been discussed before by the authority, but we've had the biggest turnover of staff that we've ever had in the fire and rescue service in recent times. A number of staff that, as was mentioned earlier, have completed their pensionable time. It means a lot of people have left and a lot of new people have come in, and to fill the gap of operational experience, we've improved our training facilities. We've now got, and when EID is complete before Easter, each of the day crew stations, St Neots, Wiz Beach and Ely, will have their own dedicated training buildings. So we've got training facilities on site so those staff can practice wearing breathing apparatus and other things. So we're looking to fill the gap because we all know the operational demand has gone down and we've got an inexperienced number of staff. So all those new training buildings, new drill towers, and that's on top of the routine stuff. So that's the balance for us has been the stuff that we need to do to maintain our buildings to ensure we don't get behind and they deteriorate over the years, and modernising them. the things that you now see, which is a shame because we did have a video showing those bits and pieces. The other thing which has changed, which the Chief talked about a little while ago, is the changing way we deliver services. We now know that we have whole-time firefighters working out of our on-call fire stations. So we've had to make some adjustments to that, which is, again, moving with the times. And I think we'd missed a bit of a trick in terms of the properties that we had, where they really fit and suitable for, how they're being used these days. And that changes over time. I suppose the last thing worth a mention from my own perspective is about what's happened recently with the pandemic. And there's work going on at the moment that Matthew is overseeing with regard to headquarters, and the fact the number of people that work in support who are now working from home, and what our support buildings look like. We have a number of stations that are used in varying amounts. There's also an issue about, are people going to work from a desk in an office for the future? No, they're not. But somewhere between that and complete home working is probably somewhere we'll end up. So I think that's about it from the property point of view. We've got, within the budget book, we have another 3 years left within the capital expenditure, which we will adjust in light of some unexpected changes this year. But I think overall, with your support, we're doing well, and it's been recognised around the service as well, which is really rewarding. People are saying, what a difference it makes, and the whole health and well-being, working in a nice environment. And Cambridgeshire know, as many of you will know, around the country for the quality of its fire appliances, its buildings and its people. So I think that's all part of that equation. So that's it. Is there anything else, Matthew, you wanted me to cover?
No, it's a shame. No, I'm on mute. No, I'm on. It's a shame. Really, if we can get that video working. I've sent it through to Amy. So Amy thinks she might have solved the technical problem I was having, which could have been user error, obviously. But Amy thinks that she might be able to share it. So it would bring that to life if we can, Kevin.
Go for it, Amy, and then I'll take questions later.
Is this working?
No.
I can see it.
No volume.
No volume again.
Pleasure to introduce.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Hello, my name's Morris.
No.
And this was my big moment.
Yeah, that's a shame. The volume's not at a level that makes it audible, unfortunately, Amy.
Let me turn my computer up right to the maximum and see if that works. And if not, that's my last try, last attempt.
Hello, my name's Morris.
Yeah, I can hear that.
Gone again.
No, it's gone again.
No. No, we'll revert to plan B again unless anything else happens. Simon, you're waiting to ask a question.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just really want to say a couple of comments, really. I was just drafting my nomination for the Oscars there, so it's a shame I didn't get to see it. So we'll put that on hold. Look, I just...
Simon, if I could just interrupt, you need to see the Christmas video. It's better in that one.
Yeah. I was going to combine both nominations. Morris, I can talk from a personal point of view what I've seen happen at Salttree, really. I think, this is commendable, some of the work you've done around the organisation. And I guess it links into the conversation we've just had on the previous paper about council tax increases and delivering a good service for the people of Cambridgeshire. And I think not only for the people of Cambridgeshire, but for our staff. So, look, well done. I just, and I'm happy to support the recommendations in the report. Maybe if you can contextualise ICT systems, which you touch on 6.2 in the report, is that going to be a huge piece of work, do you think? Or, is that going to be a costly thing that we need to do, given that, we've all been working remotely and become more and more reliant on IT?
I think Matthew's probably a better place to answer that.
So the second part of the report, Councillor Bywater, is really focused on us looking at collaboration with our police colleagues, and certainly Amy started that piece of work. She's been trying to push it along. So Amy, I don't know whether you want to come in, or do you want me to just pick up on that element specifically?
We can do that bit if you want, or I can do it as a whole. I don't mind.
So from I'll do the ICT bit first, then, and then we can go on. From an ICT perspective, the difference in the way we utilise systems between organisations is already quite the gap is quite large already. To bring those systems together may involve quite significant expenditure, Councillor Bywater, and it's at that point where we're saying actually we just don't understand what the size of that gap is at the moment. So to move it forward at pace could potentially create a challenge for us, not just financially but actually practically in implementing. So that's the reason. That's one of the reasons why we just said let's take a step back, let's have a look at this properly without rushing it too much, to make sure that we absolutely understand. Because the other thing is whilst we want to have systems that are appropriate, what we don't want or perhaps don't need is something as such a Rolls Royce that we're never going to utilise, and that's the balance that we need to make sure we get right. Comes back to that whole question around value for money, really. So that's where we're at with regard to that element of it.
Can I just come back with a supplementary, Chair?
Yeah, please do.
I guess from a fire authority point of view, that's understanding that balance, isn't it? You know, that expectation of our staff being able to work and kicking the can down the road. I don't like to use that terminology, but it's finding that balance, really, isn't it? Because otherwise, you know, if we're too long, we could create further problems, really. So it'd be interesting to see how it develops, really.
Yeah, Chairman, if I could just quickly, so this report is specifically around systems regarding our management of our properties. Councillor Bywater, there's a wider piece of work going on, which is what Maurice was alluding to in terms of that whole piece around, you know, systems and ICT infrastructure for the wider employee population, and that certainly is that will happen probably quicker than the previous part.
Thanks, Matthew. That's clear enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Probably for you, Matthew. Just to avoid any confusion, Maurice referred to the biggest turnover in staff that we've had, and then in your previous presentation, you referred to staff turnover being lower than expected,
yes,
and stable, and that may have caused some confusion.
Yeah. So effectively where we're at, what Maurice is talking about there is operational staff, and what Maurice is basically talking about is what we alluded to in the previous paper, or we have alluded to it already within the meeting, is around operational staff retirements, and that's what this is about. This is around the high turnover, not only in our operational whole time service, but also in our on-call service as well, and that does continue to be prevalent. What I was really talking to is this financial year, other than those people that have retired, we've had very few people voluntarily leave the organisation.
I think what will be interesting in the future is obviously the people that currently work under the old firefighters pension scheme that will finish in about 2 or 3 years' time. And then the people that are on the next scheme are actually they're required to work 40 years. So in the resource planning, it's more an immediate problem, isn't it?
Yeah, I understand what's being said. I just wanted to make sure that other members had a full understanding. All right, okay, I cannot see anybody else waiting to speak. We're being asked to note the progress made to date and approve the proposed next steps for collaboration as set out in paragraph 6.3 of the report. Is everybody in agreement with that? Can't see no dissent, so we will move on. Thank you for that.
Sorry, Chair, I've been trying to get hold of, I was fiddling about with my mouse. I really, in 6.3, I mean, it looks to me like we're just going to spend another few months thinking about how we can cooperate. And I think whenever this matter comes up, I think it really wants to be saved and underlined that we're looking about sort of cooperation, not merging. And you don't want to get a merger coming in by the back door.
Well, Thank you for that. It's difficult to see you, Bill, because all we can see is the top of your head. So I'm never quite sure if you wish to speak or not. But
Is that better?
Well, that's debatable, but we can see you now. Yes, we understand the point that you're making. I think we tend to use the term collaboration, and then really everybody understands what's going on, which is clearly working together, better using resources, public resources, for the benefit of everybody. But I understand the point that you're making.
And we should be cooperating with, you know, the police and the ambulance as well. I mean, wherever there's another public body, we should cooperate. But nevertheless, I think we ought to be wary that there's a sort of man trap there, and we should try and avoid it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Your past experience has made us quite aware of that, and we cooperate with everybody. We work with everybody, be it police, ambulance, volunteer, auxiliary services, anybody that's doing something for the community and there's an opportunity, we will work with them and collaborate with them.
And everybody would go along with that, I think.
So far, so good. So we've agreed that we've taken those recommendations.
Chair, would it help for me to just briefly summarise some of those points that are in the report before you agree? I was just going to briefly talk around them is that okay?
It is okay, but I did ask you earlier on and you were very quiet. Carry on then, Amy.
Thank you. So I just wanted to mention how we'd got here, because there is an appetite for collaboration from both parties. This is very much specifically around the property group collaboration. So we were looking specifically at a joint group, so one property group that served both organisations. That's what we have been looking into over a number of months, actually, and we've been gathering information for a long time, working towards it. We then picked it up again in October with a view to really push forward for a business case. But when that piece of work started to ramp up again, and we started to talk to all of the stakeholders, so not just the people within property, but going out to HR, ICT, procurement. When we started to talk more in detail to all of the stakeholders, it became apparent that actually culturally we weren't in a similar place around how we use our property function, and as we've already briefly mentioned, just ICT specifically around having a joint function, that's a whole new ballpark when you're thinking about people serving two organisations and having an ICT system that's able to do that, sit in one organisation but serve two organisations that are fundamentally separate when you've got one joint team. And we need to review how that would work with HR. There's more professional support services that would be involved in having a joint team, and outsourcing is very different between the two organisations. So there is an appetite to collaborate, but having one team might not be the answer. So we just needed to pull everything back, slow down, and actually ask the constabulary to go back and have a look at what they've done. We've done a lot of rationalisation on our side already with terms to the size of our team. We outsource things that we need, whereas the constabulary have staff there, and we've already done that work. We need them to have a look at their culture, the way that their property team works, where they're situated, and some of the logistics basically. So we just needed a bit more time to have a look at how we do that, and that's why we'd like to bring some options back in June next year that actually might be some smaller pieces of work rather than just a big bang this one team, because that is a lot of time, effort and potentially money, and we're not sure where the benefit would lie. Does that make sense? Hope that's okay.
It may have confused the matter a little, but I think we understand the point you're trying to make, and equally the point that Councillor Hunt was trying to make is that we need to be mindful that we're always remain in control of our own future, and we have a good grip of things fire service related. Whilst we'll work with anybody and collaborate, we must be in charge of our own destiny. I think that was the point that was being made. Are there any, whilst we've taken the vote and agreed, are there any questions for Amy? And unfortunately, my screen's gone peculiar and I can't see if any hands are raised. So if you've got any, you just have to shout out. No. Okay, thank you for that, Amy. Appreciate that. We will move on. Where have we got? Revenue and Capital Budget Monitoring Report. Matthew, can you introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes. Okay. So we've spoken about it already quite a bit, actually. Just a couple of points before we go on, though. On 4.3, there's an obvious mistake that I'm sure everybody's picked up. It says there that a budgetary control summary report is attached appendix 1 to the end of June. Well, actually, that should say the end of November. Just to make that clear for the minutes, that should say the end of November, because you are looking at the most recent set of figures. So if we run through, I'll take, if I may, if I can take members to the appendix, because I'd like to talk to that if you're all happy.
Okay.
So you can see there the red at the top right, which is around our whole-time firefighters. So you can, as we've already been talking about, there is an overspend there. And there's also an overspend against fire allowances. So those two figures together effectively, and the control room staff, is because we are effectively recruiting ahead of when we'd have anticipated. There's an additional burden this year. So in fire allowances, that's where our operational officers provide cover, operational cover, effectively out of hours, and they get paid to do so. But what we've had a number of instances this year where we've had some long-term sickness in that officer cover. We don't budget for sickness, as you'd expect, but when it does come along, it creates a problem for us, because we still have to make sure that the operational rota is covered off. So we need to bring other people in. So that's what we've had to do, unfortunately, this year. So it does have a financial burden. So that's that one. In terms of the senior managers' pay, a large part of that relates to expenditure with regard to the former assistant chief fire officer. There was monies coming through from, we paid Rick up to a certain point of this year. Obviously that month the income is further down, so you can see other income down the bottom, which is showing quite a significantly healthy picture. That's some of that money is included within there, so there's an offset there at the moment. In terms of other areas I wanted to highlight, you can see other supplies and services. That's where our COVID expenditure is sitting at the moment, but again we do have grant to offset that, which again is shown further down in the document. Other than that, really, I'm looking to take questions, and I'm sure there will be a few on this report. What I would say is, just to sort of highlight, this year is an unusual year actually, because things like energy, insurance, our insurances at the moment, and things like that, we haven't had vehicle movements like we have had in previous years. Our fuel, BP very kindly paid for a fuel at the start of the year. So there's been areas where we've underspending this year, which ordinarily we wouldn't do. But clearly I've left it there because actually that's a true reflection of where we are to date. So any questions that anybody may have, please.
Thank you, Matthew. I think you may have anticipated a lot of questions. Bill. You're on mute, Bill. Oh, a couple of more.
I don't know when to ask this, Chair. I've got one question, and it was prompted by the mention of Ely in the agenda, and I really wanted to ask Matthew if he was still, and it's not really related, is he still having problems with King's School parents parking in front of a fire station in Ely? In which case I have contacts there, and if he was to write to me, I could put the necessary bomb under the necessary teachers. So I know that doesn't really come under this heading, but I couldn't see where it could do.
Well, I'm honestly not aware of us having problems, but Maurice, I'm not sure. Has it been passed back to you at all?
There were problems.
Yeah, there were, but I don't believe we are now. Are we, Maurice?
No, not as far as I know.
Okay, so I'll volunteer to be a go-between should it continue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for offering your services. Mike, followed by Simon. Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. 5.5, final sentence. The service received a grant to fund this expenditure and continues to have funds outstanding from partners for items purchased on their behalf. And I just wondered how much that was and what's the prognosis on getting the money in. And then 5.7, if I may. In terms of business rates, I anticipate a very large number of restaurants, etc., around the country just ceasing to exist, and the money will be lost, I imagine.
Yes, so I think in terms of business rates, absolutely. I mean, it's an ever-changing, really, and it's a real fast-moving position. So we were told last week that South Cams were potentially projecting a £4 million deficit in their business rate collection.
Ouch.
Yes. Now that changed over the course of 2 days because they suddenly had £2 million worth of income come in. So it's I have some real sympathy for collecting authorities at the moment, because it's just there's no real way of predicting, but I expect there to be an impact. Absolutely, Councillor Shellens. So now clearly government have said that they're going to look at underwriting 75% of that lost income over a period. So how that works at the moment, we're still waiting to see in terms of the finer detail. But we don't anticipate that we'll have to bear the full brunt of those deficits, if you like. But again,
25% could still be quite a large figure.
It could. Well, I mean, and the way it works, because we're very small in comparison because of the way our business rates works, but that is still for some of particularly for the county and some of the collecting authorities, yes, it will be a significant burden. So yeah, I think it's just a case of watch this space, and when we have more information, I'll make sure that members are kept fully informed of it. And the other question was relating to the supplies and services. So where we're at, we had what we did, we purchased a load of personal protective equipment on behalf of the LRF and the SCG, and the NHS were part of that process at the time. They asked for a load of PPE, which we were able to access on their behalf. We provided that to them, and we are still awaiting payment for a large proportion of that £180,000. We do anticipate that we will get it back now, though. It sits in a central processing hub somewhere up in Yorkshire, I believe, and we anticipate that we will get it all back. There might be some delay in some of it because there's been a pushback in terms of, we again sourced some hand wash, hand sanitizer, and it turned out once the tests have been performed on that hand sanitizer that it didn't conform to the right standards. That's been pushed back through the supply chain, and we do anticipate getting that money back, but it's going through a legal process at the moment, because obviously the people that supplied it in good faith, so they're now having to go back to their manufacturer, and it does pass all the way down the supply chain. So we'll get it back, I'm sure, but
not necessarily in this financial year.
Not necessarily in this financial year. That's right. I mean, that element of it was quite small, Councillor Shellens. It was like £30,000 in comparison, so it's not going to be too much of an issue. But still, we will pursue it, and we will get as much of it back as we possibly can.
And if I may, Chairman, on Appendix 1, I'm not sure I understand the column which says a variance percentage, because I see a figure of 94% down there. Yep. And I look at the revised budget of 1.52829 million, and the variance does not look like 94% of that. Am I misreading the table?
So what that is, yeah, you're right. So what that is a variance against the actual what we'd expected to spend or receive to date, and against that one particularly, you've got debt charges there. That budget to date needs to be adjusted because our debt charges don't actually go through until the end of the financial year. So that needs amending, and I'll make sure that gets done. So thank you for pointing that out, Councillor Shellens.
But the 94% does not refer to the 1.5 million.
No, it refers to the 34,000.
Not sure that's a meaningful figure.
Well, it would be if that figure was right. That figure isn't right. That's what I'm saying. So that 460 is I will ensure that it gets amended for future meetings, so it appears more meaningful.
Thank you.
Is there anything else, Mike, before we?
No, that's me for the time being, Chairman.
Time being, of course. Simon.
Chairman, it's been covered. I was just going to pick up on the debt charges, really, the 88%, but it's been covered, so I don't need to ask. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Any more? No. Okay then. Well, at this stage, we're being asked to note the position on revenue and capital spending. So we'll propose to take the report as noted. Can't really disagree with that. And when we get into the new year, we'll have a detailed, and where there's been variances, there'll be more accurate figures for you there. We'll move on to the next item. Fire Authority Programme Management Monitoring Report. Again, Matthew, that's for you.
Yeah, I think I'll ask, certainly John can help out on certain aspects, but I'll run through this. It's the appendix really that we're looking at. So these are all the major, if you like, our major change program. These are all the particular projects. Chairman, you sit on the program board, so you'll be aware of much of this, but it's useful for members to be aware of certainly some of the significant projects. I will pick up on control specifically as well as we go through. So property collaboration we've spoken about, so I think we can skip through that. We're actually at the moment, we're going through a major upgrade in terms of our ICT infrastructure, particularly we're moving away from our current format of Microsoft to the 365 version, which is a cloud-based version, and as part of that we have what we call a document management system where all our documents are stored. We're going to need to move those over into a new system called SharePoint, which is a Microsoft system. So that's taking us quite a lot of effort and time at the moment. So timescales, we hopefully it's going to take us a bit of time. We hope that we'll be able to start migrating early in the new year. But again, it's amber there on timescales because at the moment we're not sure of the route to move the documents out of the old system into the new. So that's just something for members to sort of bear in mind. That's all I wanted to raise on that one. Unless there's any questions. No, okay. Ix and Mob. So this one, just spend a little bit of time. So the team have been doing a great job in terms of keeping it on track. We have the first service, I think, so talking to Sistel, that have tried to implement a brand new emergency control system from a remote, in a remote way. They are based in France, again, just to make members aware of that. They're a French company. They do supply this system all over Europe and to a number of services in the UK. We are working closely with them, but we have now started to hit some delays that are inevitable as a result of COVID. We've done everything we can to prevent it, but there are certain things that we need engineers on site for, and obviously with the restrictions in travel, it has caused us some delays. We're only expecting it to be 3 months. I say between 2 and 3 months. We've suggested, and they've agreed that we can go live in July. So we're still working to that. But what we will need is we will need engineers from France to travel over early in the new year to ensure that we can stay on track for that July deadline. At the moment, there is a route through, and the Home Office obviously provide exemptions for certain people. So we're hoping that we would qualify for that. Certainly, what Sistel are telling us is in other fire and rescue services where they're implementing at the moment, they have those exemptions. So as long as they continue to exist, we should be okay. So any questions on the Ix and Mobs? You're on mute. Kevin.
Mike,
Can't hear you, Kevin.
there we go. That's because I
Right.
was on mute.
Okay, two quick points. One, against timescales, it says deviation report, and I'd like to know what that means. And secondly, I see here we've got lead members specified. Which projects require a lead member?
So ordinarily, it's all of our types. So our most high profile projects. So it's our type 3 projects, as we call them. Councillor Shellens require a member input. And what we tend to do is at a project board meeting, we will ask a member to participate in that all the way through that project. So for the Ix and Mobs, we've had various iterations of this, but I believe Councillor Maguire is the lead member on this project. So. In terms of timescales, deviation report is effectively just that. It effectively just puts into it's part of the, if you like, the bureaucratic. I'll call it the bureaucratic process, but it's part of the formal process to ensure that we formalise the delay in implementing the system.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions at this stage? No. Okay, so you're all done then, Matthew. Yep. If you're all done and there's no more questions, we've been asked to note the report.
Oh, sorry, Chairman.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that we deal with all of them? I've got a number of questions. Oh, okay. I'm sure you're all pleased.
No, carry on.
PO89 ESMCP, Emergency Services Mobile Communications. We've got that as a red, so it's clearly delayed. Revisits required for coverage testing. How satisfied are we that we have a viable system while this is being cranked up?
I'll have to take that question, Chair, if that's okay with you. So, obviously, the reason it's in red is not through lack of delivery from our service. That's it's a Home Office project, and it's just been announced recently that it's going to be delayed for another 6 months. There's been quite a lot of delays throughout the life of this project. In terms of coverage, that is one of the real critical elements of this project, and you're quite right to identify that. So we are in the process of doing the coverage testing at the moment, and also in the process of bringing on an analyst to look at the results of that. And we're going to do that work jointly with the police, because we'll be using the same communication system, and it makes sense to do that work collaboratively rather than both to sort of duplicate the work. So that work's ongoing, and that coverage thing is going to be the real critical part of this project, because at some stage we will have to sign off whether we go over to ESMCP and move off of Airwave, but we won't do that until we're happy that the coverage we have in our area is sufficient for our needs. At some stage, Chris will have to sign the letter approving that to happen, but we won't.
Are you satisfied with? I mean, are there any dangers associated with the delay?
There are risks associated with the delay, but I think most of those risks are on government. There are some risks with us about how much it will cost us to remain on Airwave, and how much support the government will provide us for remaining time in that contract, because the cost of Airwave is quite high compared with what we're going to move on to with ESMCP. But
good, yeah, thank you.
Those conversations are ongoing all the time with government, and it won't be until we've done all the coverage testing we'll have a clear picture of where we are with the coverage at this time. And part of that is we get the opportunity to raise areas of concern, which are then sent up through the various channels to the contractor who's supplying the coverage.
Good, thank you. Leaping to P126 Huntingdon relocation. Planning application had been submitted, response due 24th of December. Are we getting white smoke or black smoke, given COVID and so on?
Black. So where we're at the moment is we anticipate that it's going to be delayed by about 3 weeks. And that is hot off the press, Councillor Shellens. That was earlier in the week.
That's right. I'll ring my press contacts immediately. Right. P118 fireground radios, unable to go live until breathing apparatus refresh is complete. Breathing apparatus sets a waiting date for completion to plan deployment of radios. Did we know about the need to do this when we purchased? Sorry.
Yes. So
the pouches are not compatible. That's the point.
Yes, because we purposely bought the pouches to fit the upgrade of the ASET, which we knew we were going to implement. So what we didn't want to do is buy a load of pouches for our current ASET when we knew we was going to upgrade it. So that's a decision we made, rather than buying some pouches that will become obsolete when we change our ASET.
Fine. P122 training centre review. The options appraisal paper is on target to be completed by the 3rd of December for presentation to the project board 11th of December. What happened?
I'm not hearing an answer on that, Councillor Chairns. I'm not actually on that project, but I'll find out.
Right. And P093 corresponding, is this working with the ambulance people? Is that what we're talking about there?
That is where, in areas where the ambulance service struggle to meet their response times, our firefighters will go out and respond to cardiac arrest incidents.
Right. Do we have union problems with this? Because I understood there were difficulties earlier.
This is still a sensitive area in terms of industrial relations, Councillor, yes. The national position of the FBU is that we shouldn't be doing it and it should be paused. We've carried on doing it at 2 of our fire stations. So we felt that's the right thing to do for those communities. But we can't wait for an indefinite period of time while the national negotiations around pay try to resolve this matter, because we think it's the right thing to do for our community. So we are going to push on with expanding it.
Good, thank you. P116 aerial replacement. Both turntable ladders have now been inspected. Project is significantly below initial target. Training now taking place north and south. My comment on that was good. Well done. That's good progress. And then P125 ICU, outcome of the option appraisal will be completed by the 11th of December. The usual question.
The timescales on that have slipped due to the work capacity due to COVID.
So do we have revised dates?
I'll get the revised dates out and circulate it to the meeting.
That's lovely. And finally, P131 GIS. The service owner licensing decision to extend the existing maintenance and support contract, looking at purchasing additional module, have procured a social demographic risk modeler, but need to roll out training. What on earth does that mean to a bear of small brain?
Who's going to have a go at this, John? Do you want to have a go or do you want me to?
You have a go, mate. You're more IT literate than I am.
Okay. So effectively what we have is a tool that looks to model based on demographic risk where our fire engines need to be positioned.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
There you go.
Chairman, you'll be pleased to know I've finished.
No, thank you very much for your questions. I'm sure they're of benefit to everybody. That's absolutely fine. And never be hesitant in asking a question that's relevant. Right, where did we get to? We agreed, I believe we agreed anyway, it's such a long while ago, that we're going to note the ICCS and mobilising system replacement project update and the rest of the report. So that's just for noting. Nothing requiring action other than that. We'll now move on to item 10, work programme. This has got your name on it, Deb.
Good afternoon, Chairman. The work programme in front of you has been populated up to the previous cycle of meetings, 24th of June. In the new year, we'll populate the work programme with the calendar of meetings that were agreed at the last Fire Authority meeting in October. I would just like to give members of your committee today the heads up that there will be a Fire Authority seminar prior to the Fire Authority meeting in February 21, and that's all things budget related. So if you could note that in your diaries. We don't know whether that will be virtual or physical because we await new guidance from government in May, but all future meetings at this moment in time will be virtual. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Deb. And if you think of it, if you could just send a reminder note, or Dawn, a reminder note to people about regarding the seminar before the meeting, just so there's no confusion over it.
Will do. Thank you.
Chairman, if I may yet
So
again.
that we've been asked to note that work programme, and that's duly noted.
Chairman, if I may, it's a concern I've raised in other meetings, which is there are going to be some changed faces come May. We don't know how many yet, but there will certainly be some. And how are the new luckless people then going to be able to get up to speed quickly with what's been going on?
Right, well, the first meeting of the Fire Authority, new Fire Authority, is actually June 2021. So it's a bit crystal ball gazing, really. We always have a period of induction for new members to the Fire Authority, so they understand the terminology and how we work. So that's a standing item that's planned. What we don't know is what's going to change in the meantime regarding what COVID forces upon us or not. And of course, there's always unknowns regarding finances. But there will, to cut the answer short, there will be a full induction programme on every relevant item, and we'll prioritise what should come first. Is that any help?
That's really helpful. I mean, it's the big question that to which none of us here have an answer is, of course, will the elections still take place? But that's out of our hands.
Absolutely. Well, that's the crystal ball part. I would assume that, subject to legal advice and confirmation, that if that does happen, then the Fire Authority will continue as is until a new one's put in place. But I couldn't give you a firm answer on that at this stage.
And I was hoping for time off for good behaviour, Chairman.
Oh, you'll miss it if you're not here. You'll miss it. Okay, we've done that. We've noted that. So go to the final item on the agenda, which is exempt from publication. So the committee will need to decide whether to exclude the public and the press for consideration of this report on the grounds that the report contains exempt information under paragraph 3 of part 1, schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, and it would not be in the public interest for this information to be disclosed. So members, I'm asking you, is there a general consensus that you support that recommendation? We move into what's colloquially known as part 2. Anybody not in agreement with that? Yes, Mike.
Well, having started to read the papers, I think that any information that we're going to give is going to be so obscure that nobody's going to understand it. And I can't see that there's anything likely to come out that is going to be personal. So I think it's unnecessary, but I'll go along with it, assuming that everybody else will agree.
I may well agree with your comment about parts of it being obscure, but I'll look to Matthew for guidance on this, because...
Well, I think if you just take a quick vote, Chairman, I will retire hurt.
Well, I don't think I need to take a vote, but I will do if you need to. At the moment, you're the only one dissenting.
That's right, yeah.
Councillor Giles is waving his arms around, but I ain't got a clue what for.
Basically, I support Mike. I've read these papers and I can't see any personal details in them at all. A lot of it is you know, I can't really see why we're going into part 2. However, like Mike, I will go along with the flow.
Fair enough, we won't railroad it. Matthew, can you give us a brief explanation as to why?
Yeah, so effectively, we were as part of this. Obviously, what I haven't included is some legal advice that has been sought, and I will be referring to that legal advice in a roundabout sort of way, and that is non-disclosable.
Okay, well, notwithstanding the comments that you both made, I think that's a fair reason and explanation. If we're going to be given verbal advice that is not in the papers and is part of this agenda item, then I think it's fair enough to move into part 2.
I agree, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so that can be noted. Monica, are you able to confirm there are no other people in the meeting at the moment?